most important contribution to modern living has been the capture of energy and the ability to release that energy whenever we choose, whenever we need it. Okay? Okay, so let's go forward. Next slide. Okay, historical perspective of power. So now some of these pictures up here, you can take a look at them. I love the one in the middle with the human power. I don't know if you all can see that. There's this fellow on this bicycle, and he has this like stacks of grain on it. I mean, that is the ultimate use of human power, using easy mechanics to move a large load. Okay, anyway, I found that and I said, I got to use it, even though it's modern, because you see the car in the background. Now, historically, we've had things like windmills, we've had water power, and in case you don't know, these were very important to us, because without these sources of power, for instance, the windmill, and you can see the one there looks like from the Netherlands, that was used to get water out of lowlands to drain water. I mean, that's really what that was used for. And anybody who's ever been in Texas, places where it's pretty dry, you see windmills, maybe places in Kansas, to actually get water for drinking and to fill troughs. So as long as the wind is going, you got the water. And then down below some pictures, water mills were used extensively in New England area for mills to produce cloth. Okay? So as long as there was water or a source of power, we could actually create industry. We could do things. Continue, right?
A couple of things. When you talk about power, you're talking about how you get back to a mainstream lifestyle. If you have access to power and you can distribute that power, then you can do things like manufacture, you can do things like assembly, you can do things like design. So power is really the key to how we go about redefining our civilization and keeping our lifestyle. Because we've become so dependent on power, because it's always been there, and there's been so much power that's being used, and we're going to focus on electrical power and other renewable sources of power. But let me ask you a question. Do anyone know when the first electric battery was made?
Well, there's a hand up.
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
I was just saying the Egyptians made it.
Yes. Why?
I don't know why.
Plating. Yes, it was. It's called the Baghdad battery, where they took a jug of acid, put the electrical leads in, had a filament to produce light, because they did not find soot marks inside the pyramids. So all of these things that you're going to learn today, all the things we're going to share with you today, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. How can you use it, and then how does it become affordable for you in your lifestyle?
Okay. Next slide. As John was stating, he was talking about the distribution of power. Without, the next move up in power for us away from the rivers and streams and the dams that we're using to store the power came in through steam. And steam allowed us to move away from the water source. So you could set up a steam engine that drove a series of pulleys. And they use this for the linen industry for weaving. They used it, I have one picture right in the middle, for a wash machine. And then you can see on the farm where they're using it for a steam-powered thresher. So power has been used. Okay, so as it's become versatile, as we've learned how to implement it, we've been able then to move our power plants away from rivers and become more efficient. Okay? Okay. The next slide. So where are we basically today? With the gasoline engine, with electric power, all of a sudden we have taken these power plants with, if you can imagine, first you have the water wheel, right? You have to be next to a creek to say, hey, I want to become versatile. You get into steam, and now people who can afford a steam engine then can start creating power for applications. Now with electric power and gasoline, we've been able to miniaturize our power sources, and we find that we have power sources everywhere. In fact, a modern day kitchen, and so I put it over there: refrigerator, stove, oven, microwave, dishwasher, garbage disposal, can opener, bread maker, toaster, mixer, trash compactor, blender, food processor. And that's not the exhaustive list, just for our kitchens alone. And then we take a look at the personal electronics: GPS, laptop computers, cell phones, iPod, iTunes, wristwatch, digital camera, exercise equipment, computer games, etc. How about home appliances? Clothes washer and dryer, water softener for the home, entertainment center, home computers, alarm clock, wall clock, electric toothbrush, electric razor, hair clippers, hair cutters, and we could go on. This is not an exhaustive list. Now, if we had to do this with steam, we'd have like a steam power for each one of these things, but with the advent of electricity, we can miniaturize the motors that they have and eventually end up with these little itty-bitty power plants in everyday use. Okay? Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, yes, because a battery is basically a power plant. Are you okay with that? A battery is a power plant?
Well, let me intercede here.
We're going to have to do something fun in just a second.
Yeah.
To illustrate this point that we're talking about, okay?
Power is all around us. How do we make that power into usable power is the key. Our utility companies take coal, natural gas, sometimes they'll use renewables and convert that into usable power. Why are we going that direction when we can do the same things ourselves? So I want to ask you all a question. How much power do you use? How much power do you generate? Okay. How much power do you have available at your place, at your residence? Do you even know? There's a good famous line from a movie, Inherit the Wind, and the guy is asked many questions and he makes the remark, I don't think about the things I don't think about. So this session here is to get you to think about things that you normally don't think about. Because if you had to reach in your pocket and take out a dime or a dollar to pay for every one of those items, oh, you'd start thinking about it then. But since you simply plug it in, you don't give it that much thought. So now we're going to get into how to think about these things so that when you use your power, you can maintain your quality of life. Then how can you do that affordably to meet your budget, whatever that budget is? Because if you're paying for power, then you're already inside that budget to pay for and generate your own power plant.
Let's have a little fun here. I have a cell phone. Anybody else have a cell phone? Just raise it up, please. Okay, I got 2 cell phones. Anybody have 2 cell phones? Raise up 2 cell phones. 2 cell phones. Anybody have more power generating equipment or uses of equipment? Oh, you got 2. Okay. Yes, but you also have a computer. So, right? You also have a laptop there. Who has the most number right now today in this room? The most power using pieces of equipment? Come on, start counting them. We need to know. You got, okay, you got what is that, camera? It's a camera? Okay, you have a camera, a cell phone, a laptop, that's 3. Anybody else? Watch, you have a watch. What else do you have? Just a watch? You have 1. Sorry. You got an electronic Bible, that's 4. Do you have a watch? Yeah, watch, that's 5. Come on, anybody beat that? Anybody beat that? The what? Oh, you brought extra batteries. Oh, you have 8 batteries? What do you have? What do you got? Oh, Jonathan? What do you got?
I have a couple hard drives, camera.
What, when you said a couple, you meant 2, right? Just 2?
And a computer, a phone, and a watch.
What, how many is that? Add them up real quick.
2, 4, 6.
You have 6. Anybody beat the 6? Come on, what do you got?
16 function pacemaker.
Whoa! Whoa, wait. Well, you know, the pacemaker, you know, that's 1 unit there. Okay, we got 6 in the back. Anybody can beat that? Anybody can beat that? 6? Anybody? Going once, going twice. Sold! Jonathan, right? I got something for you. Please step forward. Okay, I got something for Jonathan. This is a pure and simple energy, long-lasting energy, because apparently you're going to need it. Okay? So, Jonathan, there you go. Sir, what was your name there with the 5 units? Lloyd, come on. I got another one. So we're going to give you a pure and simple energy, long-lasting energy, because you're going to need it too. There you go. Now, what's the example there? We have in our possession, in our everyday lives, all these things that are consuming power. Okay? Now, what's on the converse side, and we're going to be talking about on-grid, off-grid living. So on the off-grid living, let's give equal time to those who have none. None of these, like cell phones, no watches. Anybody in the room that has nothing that is using power? You got one? You have nothing on you right now, in your purse, on your person. Nothing that's using power, nothing. The what? Well, okay. Anybody here? Does anybody here actually have something on their person that doesn't use electricity? Anybody? You mean all of you are using power? You're using power right now? You have a phone. Well, you got a pacemaker. You have something? You have a phone. Bill, you got something? You're using power. Everyone's using power.
Yeah.
Who?
David was out when you counted all the story.
Oh,
Oh, hey, I already gave away the goodies. You have 3 phones? How shameful.
One pouch in my backpack, and I've got 6 items. I don't know. How's that right?
Wow. You see, I mean, how many of us are users of power? So there's no one in here who is not using power, right? Everyone here is using power? Is that true? I was hoping we'd have at least one person who's not using power. Because I wanted to give you something. I wanted to give you this token of being in the club. It's a club and cheddar sandwich cracker, but it's from Keebler, the little elf. You know, we want to be part of the club that is learning how to be off grid. And I can't give this away. I cannot give this away because everyone here is using power.
now what happens when your power source is gone? Of course.
Well, sir, what was your name?
Yeah.
What's your name? David. So in David's case, if we lose power, David, where are you? Where's your identity?
My identity is definitely not attached to my stuff.
Oh, good.
Just in case, I have my solar power charger.
Oh.
Very,
Okay.
very nice.
So no one's part of the club.
No one's part of it.
Oh, well, we'll just put it right here
But-
to
but that's-
to remind you, club.
But that shows you how we are attached to electrical power. The same thing is true with gas. The same thing is true with oil, in many instances coal. And we are blindly paying for this without a regard of how much we're actually using. that's a sad state of affairs because we've become so dependent on technology, which is so dependent on energy, that we become literally slaves to energy, slaves to an outlet. So how do we break away from that mentality? And we're going to get into that. And then how can we do it in a way that it is affordable for us? And how do we think about the things we don't think about?
Okay. We'll change gears a little bit here. And we're going to ask the question, next slide is disrupted power. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So disrupted power. What disrupts power? I mean, what could possibly do that? Okay, earthquake, tsunami, we know that, right? I mean, we've seen that. Without power, everything which is part of our standard of living, it'll be different. Everything will be different. Batteries for clocks. I mean, really, would we be able to get batteries anymore, etc.? I mean, I just want you to think about that. We're not going to necessarily answer that. You know, pumping gas. Some people say, well, I'll just go down to the gasoline station and get some gas to run a generator or something. But the pumps at the gasoline station require power. You can't even get gas if you're not without electricity to pump that gasoline out. Transportation as we know it will be different with disrupted power. Refrigeration will be challenging. The heat, whether electric, gas heat, that will be challenging too. Okay, let's go on. Next slide. So what can disrupt power? Most of us think that what can disrupt power is acts of nature, and we already know that, earthquakes, etc. But how about changes in foreign governments, political unrest? I mean, I had someplace in there, Egypt, Egypt, first one. They shut down the internet, I mean, a government can basically start shutting things down, okay? So religious reform, I mean, that's another way that we've seen in some countries where religious reform has shut down distribution of power grids, etc. Economics, okay? And then we're going to go on to the next topic, acts of terrorism in our country. That can paralyze us. If anybody was trying to travel right after the towers fell, you couldn't travel. They just shut down air traffic. You had to go rent the car and drive across country to get home. So for 2 days, we were basically down. And then federal building, that was just like your heart just sank. It went like, wow, what's happening to the United States? I mean, that is an emotional thing that happens. And then extra terrestrial phenomena, solar flares, meteor, etc. Okay, so those are kind of things. So if you haven't thought about it, what can disrupt power? Many things can disrupt power. Okay, right. Next slide. Okay, so the big question is, how do we mitigate the power loss? Okay, the standard of living in the United States is so rich, 6 power items, 5 power items too. All of us in this room, we've already gone through that, right? You're going to take off your watch? You're going to take off your watch?
I gave it away so I qualified for the club.
I will present it to David. There you go.
Thank you.
Now, what we're going to try to do with David Henry, what we're going to try to do is, for this to be meaningful, we'd like you to live without the watch. He wants it. No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. But I want you to think about that. Living without the watch for an extended period of time to change your lifestyle. That's what we're talking about. Okay, and that was the whole point of that exercise. And I think we got it, and we thank you very much for doing that, accepting that, to allow us graciously to give you that and also the example. Okay, mitigating power. Now, one of the things we want to look at, the standard of living in the United States is so rich, we've already went through that. Expectations for strong infrastructure, like roads. We expect our roads. We want our roads. We want our electricity. We want our water. If anybody has ever gone to a country that is not a first world nation, you know what I'm talking about. My brother just got back from Dominican Republic. And they had batteries in the place where he was staying, so that at night when the electricity goes off, the fans are run by batteries so they continue to be cool in the evening with the fan power. And I've been to places where we don't have the luxury. You may have power half the day, you may have water supplied half the day, so they have cisterns in their homes. They don't have the water pressure, so they put tanks on top of the roofs and they pump the water from the cistern up to the roof so that tank will give them water pressure. There are many people who are already living in those types of situations, and we just take it for granted. I mean, we want it. So anyway, that's what's all. We want our stuff. Our expectation of plentiful supply creates an insecurity. I mean, if I lived in Mexico, Haiti, Honduras, or any of those places, power went out, I'd go like, it's no big deal, I'm used to it. But in the United States, if it goes out, it went out for 5 minutes. You know, how many of you are like cringing when power goes out for 5 minutes? And they're out for hours. They may be out for days, okay? But we cringe for 5 minutes, okay? So we're talking about mindsets. That's all we're trying to do. Solution is to take an inventory of our necessities and begin a process of personal conservation and minimization, okay? Okay.
Let's talk about that just for a second.
And that's where we're going.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, and we're going to get into this conversation because this conversation is important. Conservation, or a minimalist way of thinking, okay? And when we start to thinking about minimizing, I'll go back to the third world. I was in a place where they didn't get water. And if they wanted water pressure, they had to collect it in the cistern, and then they filled up these buckets and walked to the top of their house, poured it into a container, and you had to walk up quite a few times with water just to flush the toilet. So guess what they did? They didn't flush the toilet very often. I mean, they had one. It's better than an outhouse for them. So our mindset to start thinking of how to conserve energy, to turn off lights in our homes, to minimize our space. We have very large homes. We have a lot of space. Some people I visited people who live, their whole house was just where the screen in this area is. I mean, they had 4 people living there with 1 bed. So very minimalistic, etc. I don't think I need to go. I guess maybe I should say some of these, right? Well, conserve electricity, turn off lights, move light bulbs. Go ahead.
How do you go about being a minimalist in your living, but not sacrificing your quality of life?
That's a good question.
That's a question to you. Do you have any idea? There's all these extreme measures that you can do, but there's also simple measures. So this is your note-taking time. One of the things that you can do to conserve power without changing one iota of how you live is power factor your power coming into your home or residence. Any of you heard of that? Power factoring? Power factoring cleans up the usage of the power and the motors into your building or your home. So you actually are adding a capacitance unit so that your electrical draw of your amperage isn't as high. So by simply adding a capacitance unit, you've lowered your power consumption from 10 to 20%.
Now, you may have some questions about, a little bit more about that. We'll have a question and answer period. We can get into a lot more details too.
How long has this technology been available? Decades. Just folks don't use it. And if you ever have you ever felt the electrical cord and it gets warm? You've got bad power factor there. Then there is a cost to invert power from one state of energy to another. Let me give you an example. What happens to my hands?
Come on, let's all do that. Come on, this is fun.
They get warm. There's a cost of transferring energy from one state to another. And what we are fundamentally talking about is how we take that energy from us rubbing our hands together and be able to plug in our laptop. Now, that's an extreme case, but how can you plug in your laptop or your cell phone to the energy that's all around your environment? That is where we are trying to get you to think about. And there's no way in 2 hours or less than that we can give you all the different scenarios, but there's energy all around you. But before you capture that energy, you need to know what it is you're using. You wouldn't go and arbitrarily go to a gas station and hand a man a credit card or your wallet or purse and say, let me know how much it was when you finished. No, you have an idea of how much you're using in that vehicle. Well, how much are you using in your home? And then how much are you wasting in your home? What kind of phantom loads do you have in your home?
Explain phantom load.
A phantom load is a load that you don't know that you're using, but it's constantly going. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when an emergency comes, these are like little leeches on the power that you're using. So how do you address those phantom loads?
And how do you identify them? You know, I know that for us, we have one plug-in device, it's a massager, that it's constantly draining power. It is constantly using. You unplug it. So the question is, how do you identify those things in your house that are constantly pulling power?
Then I want you to think about one other thing. Can you hear me back there okay? Good. If you are in a crisis situation and you bring someone into your home or residence and they don't have a clue as to how power is used, and they live like it's coming off on the grid when you're literally living off the grid.
Meaning always plentiful, you can continue to draw.
They will drain your resources dry. Would you let someone come in and when you are trying to conserve food and cook up a bunch of stuff and throw it away? Of course not. But these folks and people who we dearly love don't have an idea on how power works and how to go about using it. So this information is not just to be held onto, it needs to be shared and educated. Because your chain is only as strong as your weakest link, and your weakest link when it comes to living under a crisis situation are those folks who don't know.
What we're talking about is changing paradigms and changing norms, is really what we're talking about. Norms, your normal behaviors. You know, what is a norm? I mean, basically, the norm is if you have a leaky faucet, you don't fix it. Or do you have a leaky faucet and you do fix it? And that's what we're talking about. That leaky faucet is continually using water, or it's continually taking water that you could be drinking and basically letting it go down the drain. And when we talk about power, yes, we're talking about electricity, but we're also talking about water sources. We're talking about gas and things, your pilot. If you're not using a furnace in the summer, why is the pilot lit? Just you turn it in the off position so that you're not using that gas. And so not only are we talking about power and what is draining. You have a question? Okay, we'll get in a second. We're not just talking about electricity, we're talking about water, we're talking about gas, and it is a lifestyle of trying to conserve, to be aware of. We were talking about security last night and just being aware of your surroundings. Well, that's really what we're talking about in this discussion about conservation and minimalization. Yes, sir? It's what? Return on investment?
If I were to come to you and tell you that let me put this on, or let me give it to you, and it would cost you virtually nothing, that it's close to 100% incentivized, what would you say then? It's 100% incentivized.
Really, I mean, we're serious.
So the question becomes, oh yeah, we're going to talk about how you go to find out what it is that you need, and then the true price points of buying this material so that you're not going to be exploited. Because I know how much it costs, because I made it. And I know how much they're selling it for. And I can tell you now that you are being exploited more than you realize. So it's all about corporate greed when it comes to these products and services, and we will teach you and show you, if you get with individuals who understand all of the benefits, then the cost should be nominal, if any at all.
Now, in your case in point, say for instance, you wanted battery backup, okay? And if there were things in your house that were draining those batteries dry, so you had to continue to keep those batteries up to speed, what would you want to do? Okay. So, and when you talk about return on investment to eliminate that, it could be something very simple that doesn't require an investment of capital to stop the drain. Okay? It may be unplug. Get unplugged so it's not draining. So there's a variety of methods and mechanisms. Okay?
And we'll get into those shortly. I want everyone to write this down, please. It's called an energy audit. Energy audit. I want you to do an energy audit on everything that consumes power. Because you don't know what to ask for, because many times you don't know what you're using or how much. So perform an energy audit. And when you look at this, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I want to put, like Edward said, give you a paradigm shift on how to look at power differently.
I wanted to talk a little bit about on-grid, off-grid living.
Okay.
Okay, did you want to go ahead and?
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
How many people have ever lived on a farm?
Farm.
Okay. You understand and get renewables, and this will be easy for you. You won't have not one iota of problem understanding, because all I'm going to do is convert terms from living on a farm to renewable energy. The rest of us have to learn something a little bit differently. On a farm, what did we do with our old food when we got done eating?
Compost.
And give it to the pigs.
Another one.
Okay.
That's right.
What did we capture rainwater in?
Buckets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did, do you remember when television went off?
What television?
Exactly. You remember things like party lines? Manure spreader. You remember going out collecting eggs. You remember that whole lifestyle. What was your quality of life then?
Great.
Why?
Yeah.
That is the value of living off-grid on a farm. The same thing can be true when it comes to your energy. Instead of us living where we waste food, where we take our food and throw it away,
Garbage disposal.
there's things that we can do living on-grid to live more like we are off-grid.
So technically what you're saying is that we could actually be on the grid, but have a lifestyle through a paradigm shift as if we're living
Off the grid. Exactly. Not substituting or diminishing your quality of life.
It's a mindset. And that's what we're talking about, is a mindset.
So with this energy audit that you're doing, you're going to learn how much you're using so you can know where you're wasting, so you can know how much you save by changing the little things. Then you know how much energy you need.
So let's not change our life. Let's not do away with our standard of living. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but someplace in there. Let's just make it so it's easy. Let's see. I'm not using the right words.
You're
Go ahead.
not changing your standard of living. You're changing the energy that provides your standard of living.
Okay.
Because now you are in full control. You are in full control of a higher percentage of those things that you're now not in control of.
Okay. Okay.
Let's
Let's
go to
continue. Next slide.
inventory.
Next slide is inventory.
When we talk about an inventory, we want to talk about an inventory of everything we got. How many of you have taken a picture and sent it in of all the stuff you got to the insurance company? Most of it. Same kind of inventory. Do the same kind of thing when it comes to what's going to use your power. Because when power goes out, the first thing that you have to do is understand what you need to do to conserve what power you are now going to generate. And we're going to assume that everyone here can generate their own power. Because I just told you that you can get it where it's 100% incentivized. 100% incentivized. That means who would not want these resources if someone else is paying for it? So that being the case, everyone has a source of their own power that they're generating. You're not going to take your money and you're not going to throw it away. So with that, you're going to take inventory of all the things that are being used.
Okay. Now, the third point up there is make a schedule of your normal day. Basically, and the reason you're doing that is to figure out where your peak loads are. Okay? Because everyone, pretty much, they've done research on this and they know when your peak loads are. Your peak loads are about 10 a.m. or, well, okay, because you're getting up to do the breakfast. So you get this peak in the morning time. And then about noontime or 1 o'clock or 2, it bottoms out. Maybe 2, 3, and then it starts to go up again around supper time. So you have 2 big draws in a day.
Okay. So what Ed is talking about is this. I want you to think of 2 camel humps. And I want you to think of 1 camel hump. The 2 camel humps are the energy that you typically use under typical families. Let me back up. One size doesn't fit all. Reagan, if I ask you to put on this suit, do you think it'll fit? And I sure couldn't fit in your clothes or wouldn't want to. One size doesn't fit all. So these are only a template for you to use. That's why I'm asking you, how do you use your power? But in typical homes, people get up early in the morning, have breakfast, their power use goes up, then the kids go off to school, people go to work, and the power use goes down. Then sometime in the afternoon, kids get home, televisions come on, they do different things, power goes up, and then it trails off, just like a double-humped camel. Now, when it comes to energy generation, let's use photovoltaics. The sun comes up, and then you generate your power, and then the sun goes down and it goes away. So you have a source of generating power. You have a source of using power. So your big task is to understand, does your big hump in the day, is that greater than the 2 humps of use? Did y'all follow that? So are you producing more than what you use? And it goes back to what it is that you're saving. Those are just energy curves, energy profiles. Every family is going to be different. So that's where your energy audit comes in. How many kids do you have? What kind of lifestyle? It isn't about how big your home is. Many people think, oh, I got a large house, so I need a lot of energy. That's not necessarily the case. It's not necessarily the case, folks. The folks is, just like I have on a yellow shirt and you have a green, you have on a red, all of us have different energy signatures that are personal to our own. It's even different from husbands and wives. Because one thing that I won't use is a hairdryer very often, but my wife might. So we all have our own individual energy curves, our own individual energy camel humps. So what we generate has to be more than those humps. And if you come from a farm, you know that you don't run out, because once you're out, you're out. But when you're generating your own energy and you run out, you always have that backup. So you never ever think about it. But if you think about when you run out, you're out, it'll help you to live and maintain that quality of life. Have I once ever said that you have to give up air conditioning? Have I once ever said you had to give up refrigeration? Have I once ever said that you had to give up any of the things in life? All I'm saying is you have to make sure that you use it in a proper manner. Any questions on that so far?
Well, I have a statement. Take a look at the curve of the two humps, right? So one of the things that we're talking about in a paradigm shift or in the changing norms is that instead of letting that peak high, maybe there's things that we could do to make those humps lower by just changing our norms or changing how we do things on a day-to-day basis. Okay.
Next slide.
Well, before we go there, one other thing, when you do the inventory, there's a difference between wants and needs. So I'd like you to consider your just wants, just needs, as opposed to, hey, I want this just because I deserve it or whatever. I mean, let's just take a look at reality. Anything on just wants or just needs?
When you size up your renewable energy or your energy producing systems, do you size it up to run your whole home? Isn't it supposed to run my whole home?
No.
Is it? Did you design it that way? Did you take into consideration all those phantom loads? Whether you're using wind or solar or generators, have you designed it appropriately? That's why you get experts to come in to analyze your own personal needs so that you can get what it is that you want, not only now, but for 20 and 30 years from now, because that's how long these systems last. To give you an example of that, when you design a cogeneration system where you're going to cogenerate electricity or energy, you're not going to want to cogenerate every single outlet in your home. Maybe you want to take care of those primary things that you want: heating, cooling, refrigerator, maybe an outlet at designated spots so you can have plug-ins and some of the lights so that your house can be illuminated. So that you've minimized and you're actually taking account of how much energy you're using. I'm not saying you're giving up your flat screen or giving up your internet or giving up your phone charger. I'm saying you design it so that it meets your needs. How many people have renewable energy or backup energy systems?
Right now, raise your hands.
Are they designed for the whole house or are they designed for part of your home? And does it work well for you? That's what you want. That's exactly what you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Just a real quick question, show of hands. How many of you do your own taxes? No, that's the wrong question. How many of you use an outside source to help you with your taxes? Okay, now, it's okay to go to outside sources to maybe help you with energy and power, okay? I mean, if you're going to, okay, just the point there. Okay, and some of you, even though you do your own taxes, anyway, we'll go. Let's go. I was thinking, man, have you been audited yet? You know, how do you mitigate that? Okay, next slide. We're going to change the topic here a little bit. We're going to get into alternative power. What is alternative power? What's available? Solar panels, PV, we talked about that a little bit. Wind generator, battery backup, gas, diesel generators, and when gas, it's natural gas or gasoline, either one. Wood or biomass gasifiers, anybody hear of those? Of course, natural gas, hydrogen, water turbine, steam engine, water wheel. I mean, there's so many alternatives to power, to getting power.
Let me break this down very simple. Have any of you ever heard of moonshiners?
Ooh. We're not asking you if you have a still, okay? That's not the question.
But that's number 4, number 5. That's all that is. And when you're doing wood, when you're doing weeds and grass, those things that you're getting ethanol. When you're doing wood, you're getting butanol. There's nothing new under the sun. They talk about electric vehicles. When was the first electric vehicle made? 1890s. Nothing new under the sun. Diesel. Are you familiar with diesel engine? What did diesel first run off of? Oil. You've all heard of Henry Ford. Did you know in the 30s he had a line of automobiles that were flex fuel that was run off of peanut oil? He worked with George Washington Carver. Nothing new. Photovoltaic effect, turning sunlight, has been around through photosynthesis for as long as there's been trees and sun. So there's nothing new. It's just how do you go about capturing those things? And I want to address those ROIs here shortly so that each and every individual can afford that. And I'll break down the financial models so that you can understand how you can make it affordable for yourself.
Now, next slide. In power, there's basically 2 considerations. One consideration is stationary power, anything that's a stationary power source, or anything that's a mobile power. Car is mobile, wagon, truck, anything that moves, a tractor. We're going to get into that in just a second. So, but in thinking of what is mobile and what is stationary, if it's mobile, you have to carry your fuel with you. Okay, so those are things that we'll be looking at. Stationary, you don't need it. You can just have a pile of whatever or a tank of it. Next slide. Source of mobile power, you know, it could be a wood gasifier. There's a picture up there of a tractor that was run in World War II that it has a gasifier, wood gasifier on it. So they're pulling the gas as they were gasifying the wood and putting it into the carburetor, and they're running that tractor off of the gas, the butanol that was coming off the wood. Then we also have biodiesel batteries, hydrogen, steam. So that's mobile. The next one, so go ahead.
Now, in the case of a disaster or an occurrence where you can't stay where you're at, wouldn't it be good that you could take your energy producing system with you? Wouldn't it be good you could back up your truck, put it on your hitch, disconnect the electrical leads, throw the breaker, and in 5 minutes, it's folded up and ready to go wherever you go? You know, we have those already. That is close to 100% incentivized, that you can have parked in your backyard or at your place of business or at your place of worship even. It's time to think about those things you don't think about.
Okay. Next slide is sources of stationary power. Again, with gasifier, you can use that to actually you can use it to run your generator. So or you can use biodiesel generator or batteries, hydrogen generator, solar panels, wind turbine, etc. So just the fact that there's mobile, stationary, I mean, that's really the whole point of these two slides. Could we do something? Could we just anybody feel like standing and stretching just for a second? I mean, I do. Oh, I'm already standing, but I'm going to stretch. Anybody want to do that? You know, sometimes these talks go a little bit long, and it's okay to stretch. You want to stretch too?
Yeah, I'll stretch. One of the things I want you to think about is, does renewable energy or energy sources, will it withstand small arms fire? Huh? Is your system designed so that if you're in such an area that it could take small arms fire and still produce your energy? Do you have those? Does your system have that capability? Did you even know? Did you know that was available? No? It is available. And it's all about the products that you buy, whether it's one or the other, to withstand those kinds of things. So if you're interested in that kind of material, those are called thin film. Please write that down. Thin film material. We did that for space because we'd have micrometeorites that would hit the solar panels in space and tear it up. And the way solar modules are designed, if you hit one, the whole module will go out. Well, then they put internal shunts in. And so you'd lose a string of that, but it still lowered the efficiency. But in thin film material, if you'd only lose that active area that actually was impacted. So thin film has its advantages, crystalline has its advantages, polycrystalline material has its advantages, like wind has its, hydro has it. So, and we can get into that a little bit more later. What is available to purchase?
Next slide.
What is available to purchase?
Now, we're not going to hit the gamut of all kinds of things. We're just going to take you down one road just to give you an example. Let me explain the picture first. In case you can't see the picture there, you have a roof of a house that has photovoltaics on it. You also have on the side by where the palm trees are, you have the on-grid power coming in from that transformer. So the transformer comes into your meter. You have, so just I'm going to stop you there at the meter. Then you have the photovoltaics coming down to your inverter, and then there's a box in the middle, basically, that feeds into. Well, the house is fed in through the meter, but anyway, just to give you a visual of just something.
This is called a line-tied PV system. Line-tied PV system.
Or photovoltaic.
Photovoltaic actually means light electricity. Light electricity. This line-tied system, it's a single stacked, meaning when they invert the signal, they're just inverting it at one time. You can double and triple stack and quadruple stack if you want to get 220 to run like drills and motors and things of that nature, or charge electric vehicles. So you would double stack your inverter being on the right-hand side of that. The meter that you see there is a net meter. A net meter goes both forward and backwards. Did you hear the story about 12 years ago, maybe, yeah, about 12 years ago when Al Gore went and put solar on his house and they had a $12,000 electric bill? The person who installed it didn't put a net meter on. So instead of the meter running backwards, it ran forward fast. Also, we're going to talk about the different types of material. This is why you just can't let anybody come up and say, I can do this, do this. This is a crystalline system. Looks like it is a polycrystalline system. That means this material is slightly sensitive to the negative, bless you, when it comes to higher temperatures. So the hotter it gets, the less efficient it becomes. Also, it is a string inverter, meaning if any part is shaded, it will shunt the rest of that string. so that your electricity production is lower, even though you've got sun shining on 99.9% of your module or your array. This is inverting at about a 0.77 efficiency from the modules being produced DC to AC. Because anytime you invert energy, it's going to cost you something. So these systems are about 0.77. Have I ever talked about changing the quality of life or giving up air conditioning or those things? I haven't talked about that. It's all about how you size up your systems for what it is you need. All about sizing up your systems for what it is you need. Now, if you want something that will sustain you during power outage, it's called a battery backup system. So your inverter would be slightly different. This inverter sees 60 hertz plus or minus 2 coming in from the grid. Whenever it sees a difference than that 60 hertz plus or minus 2 hertz, it automatically opens and your array does not produce. Wow. It's not giving you power when you need power the most. So if you want power to be continuous, you would want a battery backup system where your inverter would then go to a set or bank of batteries. Your batteries last from 5 to 7 years typically. Now, there are ways to get batteries to last longer. Technology's come a longer way, but it's more expensive. But again, we want to show you how to do this where it's close to being 100% incentivized. So are you ready for the money part?
Yeah, I'd like to
stop
just,
me?
well, I'm going to stop on this slide for just a little bit. Because we're using terms we're not sure if they mean anything to some people. Net metering, I'll just give you an example. If anyone is here in Missouri that would like some photovoltaics, some solar panels on your roof, eventually you're going to have to get, if you're working with KCP&L, so they're really their power source, and that's the power that's coming in off the street. Okay, so that's really their power source, and using the photovoltaics, you're going to need to work with them so that they can tie you into the grid, so to speak. And that's called, and the process for doing that is a net metering. There is an application process that you have to go through. So the net metering, even though we're using this, because remember we're talking about on-grid, off-grid versus and the style and the lifestyles. So we're not assuming through what we, on this slide, we're not assuming that you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, we're assuming that you're in the power grid area, that you're using some of that power. So the net metering is the relationship then that you have with your power provider. So then we said, okay, what is the most basic system there? Number one is the most basic system. So you basically are taking power off the grid and you are co-generating your use of power using photovoltaics or panels on your house. Now, you could use other ways. You could use wind, so it doesn't have to be power panels. It could be wind, or it could be some other sources. Now, number two up there is then net metering, then and co-generating, but now you're using a hybrid system, some other source to feed up into it. It could be a power generator. So then you have the power that's coming in from the grid, you have photovoltaics, and then you also have a generator. So you try to basically redundancy and make sure you have plenty of power. And some people say that's great, but I think I may have a need for continuous power. Okay, then you may want to hook up some batteries there. So that's what number three is about. So we're just trying to tell you that there's flexibility in how you get power. Tying into the grid, so you're using some of that power, you're using some photovoltaics, you're using wind, you're using a generator, you're using batteries, and you can connect them all together. Number five, we say, okay, let's go a step further. Let's just say that now we have an electric vehicle charging system. It's on your garage, you can plug in a car. And then you say, but I want more flexibility than that. Okay, well, let's make the whole thing mobile. So that you can quick disconnect it, go down the road, and you plug in someplace else. Did I hit that correctly?
I think you did a real good job.
Okay.
And now it's time to talk about the money.
Okay.
Everybody want to talk about the money. Count the money, count the money. And it's simple. The simple formula is this. For those of you who are in Kansas City area on the Missouri side, write down 30%.
30% is what?
30% will be your utility rebate that you're getting from the utility company. Oh, and by the way, before I get further, for those of you who are off-grid, we can talk about those incentives also, because they're two different sets, both on-grid and off-grid. So on-grid in Kansas City, you're at 30% with your utility rebate. That 30% is set off of our pricing structure. So I want you to use a price structure of, you know what, put down $4.37 a watt, right? $4.37 a watt. Then you write down, you're gonna take $2 a watt off for your rebates. Then you get an ITC tax grant that we paid into of 30% tax cash back from the IRS. So that's $1.30. What's 30% of 437? $1.30. Then you get what's called 100% bonus depreciation.
Yeah. Thank you for the humor. We really appreciate that.
So your bonus depreciation comes in your tax bracket, which you can monetize by selling to those who are at a higher tax bracket at 30%. So 30% of that is how much? Of the 100% bonus depreciation. What do those add up to be? What did you get? Oh, and how much did it cost? So that means I get to cut you a check back after putting this on your system? You're available Monday? Did you all know that all of these things were there? So you always want to double and triple check. And, oh, and by the way, this model is available in many places nationwide. So if you want Texas, you want Michigan, you want California, there's a lot of different places that have these same incentives.
What states don't have them that you know of?
It changes on a regular basis, and it's going to be on a first come, first served basis for those who want to take advantage of those incentives. Because when they go, they're gone. And by the way, they've been here for a long time. These incentives have been here for the last year and a half. So in Missouri, Kansas City Power will allow you to put out, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. 30. Yes. No. Rebate is $2 total. You get, yes.
It's not a percentage, it's just...
Not a percentage. It's $1 fixed per watt. So it's $2 per watt, and then $1, what is it, $1.30 per watt, and then there's another $1.30 per watt. So, pardon? That is, one is your ITC, write that down, ITC tax grant, 1603 under the IRS code. It's called the ITC tax grant, 1603. Any of you looking that up on the internet? Have you found it? Yes,
Or 30% what you produce,
30% of your cost.
of your cost. And so when your costs are paid back,
Yes, this is a one-time.
30% bonus depreciation, that means bonus depreciation plus 30%?
No,
Total 30%.
no, your bonus depreciation is 100% of the cost of the system,
You take it the first year.
instead of taking it out over 5 years.
So you take 100%
Huh?
depreciation the first year.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
say that?
That's regardless of how much you produce. That's just,
It's a,
take that as a tax credit or a
Yes.
tax deduction.
You have to get with your accountant and your,
When you're saying 30%, you're assuming kind of a deduction, right?
yes, yes.
it's the same way that you would handle depreciation. Okay. Yes, it is.
Okay, one is a credit, and the other one is a depreciation that they give you credit for. So you have two different items. 100% bonus depreciation is your tax credit, and then you get a check or a tax credit that you're able to double dip on till December 31st, 2011.
We didn't write it down. We're really sorry about that. What was the question?
If you want to find out more, see David or Ed, and get with them and let them explain to you what is available.
David, raise your hand. Thank you, David. That's David. David's right there. Do it again. Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any states that don't participate in this? Because I'm in the Carolinas, I'm in North Carolina.
Oh, you're close to my own home. I actually have land on my mother's side that was given us from the time of slavery down in South Carolina, just off of 77 there, by Winsboro. And North Carolina does, you're talking about Duke Power. Now that's going to be a little bit different because you can get, what is Duke offering? Duke is offering performance-based incentives off of what you produce. So each state, each area is different. Do you want to find out what you have in your state? You go to the website called Desire, D-S-I-R-E. D-S-I-R-E. I think it's .org.
Or .gov? No.
That gives you a list of all the incentives.
If you just write the acronym down on Google, it'll give you sort of a list of, what to look for. Some of them are .gov, some of them are .org.
Did you find the Desire?
We don't know
find that yet?
if anybody's looking it up.
I'm giving you a lot of information in a short period of time, ain't I?
This subject is, I know we're spending 2 hours, on this topic, and we talked earlier about the fact that the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And even though I've been in the industry for 30 years in starting businesses, I found out that I don't know anything. At least that's what I claim. And you've been in this industry John, you've been 30 years in this power. Are you going to claim you know everything?
I don't have a clue.
Okay, so basically we're all learning, okay? And as government regulations come in and programs come in, programs go out, they're changing. Colorado just changed their laws, at least with the public utility.
Mm-hmm.
They just changed here due to some politics. So now a lot of the incentives that were in Colorado are no longer as high as they were. So now it's difficult. And that's why we're saying, it's by state and it's by the different utility that you're using. In Missouri, we have 2 major ones, which is KCP&L and Ameren. Ameren is in the St. Louis area. Those utilities run differently because they're private utilities than the public utilities. The public utilities fall under a different statute, and so they don't necessarily have to do the same sort of programs because they're owned by the consumers, or like a co-op. So basically they fall under a different law or statute.
Yes, sir. Yes.
What's the question?
Do you know of any legislation or any states that are renewable efforts?
Yes.
Renewable adverse states.
And let me preface that by saying everyone has their own niche that they have a self-interest in. Like Kansas is for wind, but not for
Solar.
solar. Colorado is for wind and solar. Oklahoma is not for solar, but for wind. There is Wisconsin is for solar and not wind. So it's all about what their public interests are in those areas and what those rebates are. And so you might look at these numbers and say, oh, they got some good incentives, but you have to read the fine print and really understand what the purpose of it. And then what you're able to double dip on.
I'm not sure if double dip is an interesting word.
Yeah, no, okay. What you're able to take advantage of from the same pot of funds. For an example, you're getting two incentives from the IRS that normally does not allow that. But under one legislation they do, so that's why you're allowed to get the 1603 ITC tax grant as a check and then get the 100% bonus depreciation on the system, even though it's coming from the same IRS. Now, normally under those circumstances, you're not allowed to do that. And so you have to find out what the regulations and things are. The other thing is, I'm only giving you the tip of the iceberg. I haven't talked to you about selling carbon offsets and renewable energy credits yet, which is available to individuals on a state-by-state or area-by-area basis.
Okay. Question.
We've already discussed the fact that I have a lot of power stuff. No, but a lot of these grants, from my experience, not necessarily in this area, they do have caps on them sometimes. And so is that also true kind of in this area?
Yes, there are caps.
So the system could be of such size that you would cap out and make it an attractive program, but not, you're not going to be writing a check, correct?
Well, and for instance, okay, so you're talking about a cap. For instance, KCP&L, they're going to be taking a look at your average use. Okay, so they basically factor in, they figure out what your average use is, and if you put more photovoltaics on your roof than your average use, you're saying, hey, I'm going to start a power company.
Oh, bad word. Bad word.
Yeah.
Please write this down. Every one of us in this room need to write this down. We are never going to be a power company. We're always going to be a PPA provider. We're going to provide through a power purchase agreement, never a utility. Because once you become a utility, you must meet all those regulations and stipulations. So you're going to provide power through a cell agreement.
Yeah. So going back to that thing, if you want to put more photovoltaics on your roof, maybe you have a barn out back. KCP&L or someone like them basically are just going to do, they're just going to say whatever your normal usage is. Okay, that's your regular usage. So anything above that, the reimbursement cost for that power is at a different rate, a much reduced rate. Okay, so that's the difficulty of producing too much. It was a good question, thank you
But
very
I
much.
think your question was, how do I get a check? So if you want to understand how you get a check from your utilities, this is what you do. Yes, sir? You had a question? Oh. How much power? Well, I think my time is up.
No, we're doing okay.
We're doing okay? Okay.
We're doing okay.
How much power do you use? Do you know how much power you use? So you get your last 2 years of energy statements. Then from the last 2 years of energy statements, 40 seconds?
Minutes.
Oh, 40 minutes.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, we're doing okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You take your last 2 years of your energy statement. Then from there, when you conduct your energy audit, you're going to save a percentage of your power just through the audit itself.
That was what we were saying, do your personal audit, do your personal inventory, you know, take control of your life when it comes to power. So that's what, take control. And that's what we're talking about, the changing your norms, your paradigms, okay, on how we use.
So if you reduce your power consumption by 20%, how much electricity are they going to allow you to put on?
So you're using the average, this is 100%, you reduce it, your consumption, so instead of doing your average for the last 2 years, you reduce it by 20%.
Then you put on 100% of renewables, which they allow you to do by law.
Because they have that history, they have the 2-year history, and you put in that much PV or whatever you can incentive to that original route, the original amount, even though you're now change your paradigms, change your norms, and you're using 20% less.
Then you install your system, and the way it works in Colorado and is different than other states. Some will cut you a check back at the end of the year in December. Some will cut you a check back if you're over $25. They'll cut you a check back on a monthly basis.
Talk about lock-in.
About what?
Locking in.
Oh, then when you add your renewables through your net metering agreement, that's why you want to have a good, strong PPA, you lock in your utility rates for the next 20 years. Which
means that if the rates go up,
the rates that they buy your electricity from you go up. So you're basically at today's rate till year 2031.
So when you're in the Missouri side of Kansas City and you wanted to do something, I mean, what, I mean, are you talking, should they do the solar more than the wind? Or when you look up something, what would that look like?
well, okay, I would just say that there's a variety of things. I mean, we've been talking about what is your power consumption, because your roof could probably only handle so much. Okay, what's it facing? Is it facing, I mean, do you have a south facing, or do you have a big east-west facing, or is it? Well, north isn't going to help you very much. And then when you talk about wind, I mean, you know, do you live in a subdivision?
No, it's on
3 acres. Okay, so your typical for your wind, if you put up a wind tower, if it falls, it must land, please write this down, y'all. It must land on your property and your property only.
So I'm just thinking practically, like, if we talk about this, like, what's the next step? I mean, I don't, you know, is it solar, is it wind, who do I talk to? I'm just trying to figure out, like, in a meaningful way,
Again,
what do I do?
everyone is going to be different. So I can't give you a bullet point where you need this, 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 and this. It may not fit for you. So every individual circumstance has to be looked at. And then I need to know about your lifestyle. What's your family like? Is it growing? Is it expanding? What do you use? That energy audit tells me everything, because do you want me to sell you something like everybody else? Or do you want me to be a partner with you to make sure that you truly get what you want and need?
Just a consideration, you know, when we talked about, earlier I said how many of you use accountants, or not accountants, but if you prepare your own taxes or you use somebody else to prepare your taxes. Sometimes the reason you use other people to help you give you an idea of the things to think about and some of the options that are available. In the point of where you are in your family cycle, if you have children that are under, say, 12 years of age, their consumption of power, of energy, is a lot different than if you had children who were basically 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you know, living at home. And then they leave the house, and all of a sudden your energy usage changes. So it depends on where your family is, what your usage, and where you're buying it now. Anyway, there's some considerations.
Did I answer all of the questions?
You know, I just want to apologize. Look, we're not trying to make this difficult, and it is very, you know, from where I stand, it's real difficult to say, this is what you need, or this is what you need, without knowing your situation. You know, we were talking about food earlier and listening to the discussions about the food, and they're saying in a normal environment or in this environment or that environment. So everything is a little bit different. And we're not trying to make, and we are presenting a lot of information. So I'm not sure if there's a clear-cut way to say, you need this, and whatever this is. I mean, I could ask the question, how many different kinds of vehicles do we have as far as colors, as far as size of the vehicle? What do you drive? How many people drive cars? How many people drive a four-door, you know, a sedan? How many drive a two-door? It's all different because of who we are as individuals, our lifestyles, our personalities.
But the thing I want you to really take home is this. I can't, no one really can design something for you that's going to fit for you without you knowing what you need. So many people buy things and don't know how to use it. How many men, and this is a question for the men, how many men have read your instructions on your remote control and actually know how to use it?
I know how to use it, but I haven't read.
We just start pushing buttons. Well, we don't want to take this investment and make it where you just start pushing buttons. Yes, sir. So that's why we're not being, if it comes across as we're being ambiguous, it's just that I don't know what your needs are. And that's a disservice that people do when it comes to this industry. Yes, sir. No, I'm done. Go ahead.
And I'll just make a statement. It's just like if you've ever built your own house, it's different than buying a house. Because if you buy a house, you walk through and say, do I like this or don't? When you build your house, all of a sudden, you're talking to an architect or a designer, and all of a sudden they say, what do you want? And you go, I don't know, build a house that I would like. And they go, well, or design it like I would like. And they go, well, what do you like? I don't know, come over to my house and take a look. And then you tell them what you like, what you don't like. And eventually you end up with a design that works for you. And you move in and you go, this doesn't work for me. I don't know if anybody, has that ever happened to you? This door was too narrow. Or by the time you design your second or third house, you're actually doing really good. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Your question?
I know what I'm talking about, right? Okay.
Okay.
That's a good segue, because you can answer about real estate and reselling the home. So the questions I have regarding that, for example, if you enter into a PPA provider, I guess you have contractual agreement. So if you go to sell, what happens to that agreement?
Okay.
It transfers over through the sales, and that's inside of that PPA agreement.
So basically the buyer is buying into that agreement.
Correct. And it's being done every single day.
And I'm not sure if everyone caught what the question is, but you basically enter a contractual agreement with the PPA and the power purchase agreement. And so if you want to sell your house, you now have solar on it. That means that the buyer of your house has to take into consideration they're buying it with up on the roof.
But now you're opening up well, I didn't want to go there, but I'm going to give you this information.
Yeah, we may not. I don't know. I just don't want to overwhelm everyone.
But I think he needs to know this.
Okay.
You get what's called a green mortgage. And a green mortgage gives you higher lending limits because you have solar, because solar comes in at about 50%, 60% of the value of the cost of what it puts on. That's the actual appraised value on the house. So that's for the real estate side. Then you get a green mortgage, and a green mortgage gives you 103%, and it gives you a half a point lower because you have renewables. So those are pretty typical things when it comes to real estate. Yes, sir? Sure. The cost of systems vary from area to area, even though the material is the same. So what you pay for in New Jersey is going to have a different dollar cost for the exact same thing in Colorado, which is going to be different than here. So what are your local costs? Traditionally, your local costs get higher as you go further west and hit the further west and east you go, the higher it is.
And that's for installation?
Those are for the install cost. Even material cost goes up. It's the exact same equipment, whether it's a thin film material you get from Troy, Michigan, or a crystalline material you get from Arizona. It's going to be the same material with different costs. So area cost is going to be key. So where are you getting your material from is the key to all of this.
And maybe the question that you're asking is a little bit different, because maybe the question you're asking is, if I have so much usage, kilowatt hours per month, what's it going to cost me to try to get that much? Okay, that's really what you're asking. Did you want to just stay in the photovoltaics, or did you want to also have a generator backup? Have you thought about that? You want generators? Do you want to do photovoltaics and maybe wind? Okay. Do you have a preference if it's just photovoltaics? If you had to choose between photovoltaics and wind, would you rather have photovoltaics or wind? You'd rather have what?
Affordable?
Affordable.
Affordable.
Okay, so let me just sort of recap. You're talking about, okay, you said photovoltaics and maybe wind with a backup generator, enough to handle whatever load you're currently exhibiting. Okay. And how would you price that system?
How would we price it? Do you mind if we use you as an example, sir?
Unless we want to use somebody else. Could we use, maybe, I just looked at my bill for last month. Okay, my bill, we used 2,000 kilowatt hours, okay, for my last bill.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you why.
Very good, because it was cold. Okay, so we're running the heater. Okay, so basically it goes into the seasonality of the usage and one of our sons just moved back into the house, and he's a little bit younger than I am, so his water consumption is a lot higher, which means that now he's using more electricity. Okay, so when he's not there, it goes down. Okay, and then our lowest load has been about 800 kilowatt hours.
Okay, and when was that?
That was in October.
I'm doing this on the fly.
Okay.
So we haven't talked about this or practiced this. Do you know why it's lowest in October?
Yes, I do. Because that is probably one of the most temperate months here in Missouri as far as consumption. So we're not running the air conditioner, we're not running the heater yet, and we may have the windows open. And because of the way the sun is shining, we're probably not using our lights for an extended period of time during the day.
Okay. What's the orientation of your house?
Our house, basically the roof line basically goes north-south, so we have most of the exposure on east-west.
Okay. Now, any kind of alignment for east-west, you're going to have a little bit higher D rating for energy for photovoltaic generation.
Now, I do have the addition to our house that does have a roof line that has a big southern exposure and has also the northern exposure, but we're not going to use that.
What type of roof?
It's a peak roof, straight across, and it has an inclination of, I don't know the inclination, the pitch.
What's the material?
It's a composition. Composition shingle.
How old?
The composition shingle is within the last 10 years.
Have you had any hail damage recently?
No. On the old roof, hail damage has shown up. And the question is, I know you're asking a lot of questions, but why are these questions germane? The audience is asking.
Because I don't know. I've got to engineer and stamp whatever I put up. This is not some guy who's putting up solar out of the trunk of his car. This is going to be something value added that you're going to be able to use and then those who come behind you will be able to use. So we're going to design it correctly, so I need to ask the right questions so that I can get a right feel for what it is that you need.
Who takes liability during installation?
The installation company.
If I sell you power, am I taking a liability issue?
Through your PPA, you're under limited liability under the PPA, and that's why it needs to be written strongly. There's limited liability based off of having the NEC code for photovoltaics, making sure that it follows that code. Once you follow that code with the proper engineering stamps and the proper disconnects, you are fine.
I'm going to stop the conversation here for a second. Is this the reason why a lot of people don't go photovoltaic and renewables? Now, does it mean that it's impossible? Okay, yes, engineers charge by the hour. Now, and there's a lot of issues to consider, because there's liability. You have to put guide wires. You're penetrating the roof at times to put the anchors in as you're working. What kind of material is up there? What are you dealing with? So many people have shied away from these things, because when John was talking about the rebates and all those, there's a lot of paperwork to go through. Okay, now let's go to the other side. Is it doable? And can you do it? That's the real question. And your name, sir? Roger, you said, what is the return on investment? Well, basically, if you've ever built a house, Roger, and I was told when we built our first house, they said, we'll see if your marriage lasts, okay? Because there's so many decisions that go into it, okay? Your wife may want a different color carpet, walls, etc., and you have to deal with that with the contractor. So anyway, point being that we're not trying to make this difficult. This discussion here today is to give you sort of the wide gamut of informative, but also to give you hope that it is doable.
And also to show you the difference between those who say they put up solar and solar professionals. Here's a question that probably none of you will ever hear. What kind of small animals do you have in your neighborhoods?
Squirrels, a lot of squirrels.
Red flag. For those of you who have renewable energy systems, why is that a red flag? Why? Because they're attracted to the DC current. That's why squirrels chew on your DC generated power. They're attracted to it. So I asked that question because I would then sleeve his system so that whatever strings of DC, everything would be sleeved or accounted for so that squirrels won't gnaw on it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Wait. I want to go to the next slide.
We had a question here.
You know, we're going to have questions all day. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
May I make a commercial?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to make a commercial? Come on, Reagan, make a commercial.
So these gentlemen, brilliant gentlemen, we have about 10 more minutes with in here formally. Here's my commercial. We actually have, 50 plus products for you to sample right in this room next door to the Hawthorne 2 that are the freeze-dried and dehydrated samples, so that's almost ready. So what I'd encourage you is we'll take 10 more minutes in here formally, and then if you two will join us in the room next door, people can be eating their little samples of freeze-dried food and continuing on the conversation if they will indulge you. If they say no more, please honor them and withhold your questions. So 10 more minutes in here, and then sample time next door. So when we dismiss, head over, gives you a great chance to try the foods, see what you like, see what you don't like, and compare things like freeze-dried and dehydrated side by side so you know what you're getting. Lots to sample, okay?
Okay, thank you. Okay, things to remember. Power, remember we started with the windmills, we started with, you know, all the ancient things, okay? Okay, and we said basically we forgot a lot of that stuff. And we also said that we really like our infrastructures right now. But things to remember, long-term disruption, okay, will affect the ability to revive the infrastructure. If there's a road that's not being driven on, that road is decaying on a daily basis. Either plants are growing or snow, ice, the contraction and expansion, that's happening. So your infrastructure, the longer that the infrastructure is down, the more difficult it is going to be to revive that and get it using again. So why is that important? It's just things to remember in the infrastructure. Okay, the infrastructure of everything that we have, whether it's power distribution that may go out, water distribution, gas distribution, any one of those. Okay. Cooperation with neighbors. I want you to get the idea that cooperation with your neighbors is going to be a necessity. Yes, we're talking about on-grid, off-grid. I'm going to tell you this. I believe that our grid is the people we know. Is our friends, our relatives, maybe the believers. That's your new grid. So we're talking about a mindset, okay? We're talking about norms. And we're talking about maybe getting off the grid, or what happens if the grid, you have a new grid. And let's think in those terms. What is that new grid? Therefore, live close to people you trust, or in a good neighborhood or with a good neighbor, someplace. I mean, live close to people that you can work with. Start associations with these people. Start working on projects today. Start working on them. Just get this network going. And then the third point up there on things to remember is think ahead and change your lifestyle now while the infrastructure that we currently have is active and you can use it to buy products or to implement the products or to get them manufactured. So think ahead, use your existing infrastructure to get products to you easily. Next slide. David is back there. Raise your hand. Okay, so again, do it again, David. Raise your hand again. There you go. Okay. So he's there. I'm Edward. This is John Hall. And we thank you very much. We're going to go eat your goodies, right? Let's go eat some power goodies. Any last words?
The last word, and I know I didn't answer all the questions, and there's so many out there to answer. But at least now you have an idea of what questions to start asking and to think about the things that you normally don't think about. And we are here to help. And if there's anything that we can do, please don't hesitate to call. We thank you for having us here.
Okay.